It was the year of 1947 in the small village called Hunammu, where my grandma's uncle, who was an old bachelor in his late 30s, married a young girl from another village that was a few miles away. This girl was already engaged to her boyfriend, but my grandma's uncle dragged her back to the village by force with help from his friends. A few months had passed and the girl continued to live in despair. She was so depressed that she took her own life by eating poison. This happened in a forest at the area where the villagers would go cut wood. A few hours after her death, my grandma's family found her body when they went out to cut wood. They discovered her lying behind a rotting tree trunk. The girl was already turning purple and foam was coming out of her mouth. My grandma said that she died with her eyes open and her body had an awful stench. They took her back to the village and prepared a funeral for her. The village did not have a tzikleng, so my grandma's dad and uncle had to go call one from another village. That day, when they were doing her funeral, the tzikleng was blowing his kling around the dead girl and heard a voice saying, "Love or not, I died without closing my eyes." The man was wondering why someone would say that, but he had to finish his job. Again, while performing his kling, he heard a woman say, "Love or not, I died without closing my eyes." He was a little freaked out at this point, but had to continue the song. It then happened for the third time, and he was curious as to who was saying it. That's when he decided to take a look at the coffin to see if it was the dead girl. When he looked at the dead girl, he saw her with her eyes opened and smiling back at him. Her eyes were moving and following him wherever he went. He froze and shook from immense fear. He had been a tzikleng for a long time but had never come across a situation like this. The man dropped his kling and ran out of the house. The family and visitors were confused as to why he just took off and went out to go ask him. He could not talk back but just kept on shaking. They went back into the house and for some reason the room looked darker than usual. Then they started to smell a foul stench, and then they heard a knocking sound come from the coffin. The sound went knock, knock. Should I get up? Knock, knock. I think I will. They were all spooked at this point, and the elders said that they will have to hasten the funeral because this one will be coming back as a walking corpse. They rushed the funeral that day and buried her. Many months had passed, and from my grandma's point of view, she and her friends were going to the area that the girl died to chop wood. When they got there, they heard a woman's cry. My grandma was still too young to know anything at that time, but she remembered her older cousins were so scared and kept whispering in each other's ears. They all decided to turn back because they were afraid to walk any further. My grandma and her friends were not the only ones to hear the crying woman. Many of the villagers who went into that part of the forest to chop wood at or around that location would hear the same thing. They said that if you say her name or even talk about her tragic story, she would show herself to you and follow you home. Her spirit would play with the pots and pans in the kitchen, and at night she would stand at the edge of your bed and drag you off with her cold hands. If you want to avoid her angry ghost from haunting you, you try not to think about it or talk about her. But it was really difficult not to do this, so the villagers banned the area that she passed away in and found a different part of the forest to chop down wood. Interested in sharing your stories? Submit them to HmongChronicles@gmail.com or in the description below. Here is the next story. Thank you. I am married and my husband works third shift. I am a mother of 4. I have a 4-year-old daughter sleeping in the playpen and my baby boy in the bed. My oldest and second boy sleeps in the room next to me. I remember putting all of them to bed before going to shower. I'm those type of girls that if I don't shower at night, I cannot sleep, so I have to shower. When I went to shower, it was about 10 p.m. I could feel something like a cold wind blowing by, but I didn't care. I proceeded to do my night routine. After the shower, I got out and put on some comfortable clothes and went to bed. I was dreaming that I was sitting on a chair and my two sisters were by my side, one on my left and one on my right. I see these people sitting down, begging me to open the door to heaven so that they can be reincarnated. It was a group of people in 4 rows with 3 people in each line. The first 3 rows of people looked pretty normal, but they were still scary. The last row, however, were 3 girls with long black hair covering their faces and wearing old Hmong clothes. I got the vibe that something is not right. My sister proceeded to tell me that everything is okay and I have the power to eliminate any evil, which I didn't believe. Suddenly, while I was still sitting on the chair, I felt hands grabbing me. These hands started to scratch me and I heard voices saying that they needed help. It felt like I was in a trance. I felt weak and I felt defeated. Then the dream shifted to my old house in Detroit, Michigan. I was in the bathroom. Everything seemed dark and gloomy. I walked out of the bathroom and saw this girl going in to take a shower. I grabbed her by the arm and asked her if she called me here. She says no, but to warn me about 3 girls who are trouble. She then proceeded to take a shower. I turned around and proceeded to walk forward. I was in the dining room now. I looked to my right towards the living room. I saw a black figure sitting there with a wicked laugh, and they were waving at me as if it was calling me. I got scared and proceeded to run back to the bathroom and turn my left towards a bedroom, which was my mom's old bedroom. I closed the door and panicked and fell onto the bed. Then I felt 6 pairs of hands grabbing me and scratching me. I got mad and furious. I broke free and demanded answers. I didn't care about my fear. I got up, kicked the door open, and demanded answers as to why I was there. I walked throughout the entire house and still didn't see them. I told them that if they weren't going to tell me why I was there, then I am going to leave. I will not be returning and banished them to hell forever for what they did to me. Then, all 3 of them showed up in front of me. I wasn't scared. I faced them with courage. They were still ugly. They had long black hair covering their face, and they weren't wearing any shoes, but were still in Hmong clothes. All 3 of them reached out their hands to me. Right when I felt their hands on me, I saw and lived the last moments of their life before their life was taken. These 3 girls had one thing in common. They were all assaulted and killed. It was hard for me to feel what they felt in the last moments of their life. When I opened my eyes had tears. My eyes widened as I saw all 3 of them looking at me smiling. They were so beautiful. Their touch was calming. It was then that I started to chant. I don't know what I was saying, and I couldn't understand what language I was speaking. Then I saw a light, a bright light, and all 3 of them started to thank me for saving them, for letting them have a second chance at life. They said that they never forgot about our friendship in the past. I don't even know them. I was thinking to myself, why would they say something like that? Then all 3 of them disappeared. I looked back and saw both of my sisters again. I was really confused at what happened, and they told me that I did a good job. Then I kept feeling like someone was slapping me. I heard a voice telling me to wake up. When I finally woke up, it was my husband. My husband hugged me right away and said that he was so scared that he was going to lose me. My body felt cold to the touch. I was talking in gibberish that he couldn't understand. My husband is a paramedic, and he said that my heart rate was dropping. When my husband finally let go of me, I looked at the time. It was 5 a.m. in the morning. I asked him why he came home so early tonight. He said that he wanted to come home because he felt like something was telling him that something bad was going to happen. It was just one of those gut feelings. I told my husband about my dream and about what happened. He asked me if something like this had ever happened before, and I replied with no. This was the first time. We had a shaman take a look at me, and he said that somehow I traveled through the spirit realm, and that the two sisters represented my shaman guides. What I experienced was only the beginning of what I'm going to become in the future. The two guides saw potential in me that I was able to fight through and face my fears, and that I am next in line to become a shaman. I was given a red and white string to protect me. The shaman said that it was hard on me because I had to relive the last moments of the girls' lives. He also told me that I am a gatekeeper. I can request to have the gates of heaven to be open and to reincarnate lost spirits. Weeks before my grandma left us, she told us that if we didn't behave, she'd come back and twist our ears. We were just kids at the time, so this greatly scared us. A few months later, after she left us, I started to hang out with bad kids at my school who had a bad influence on me. I never listened to my parents anymore, and I would argue with them. One night, my parents decided to leave the house and left me with my two younger brothers, about 6 years old, and a sister, about 5 years old. I was in the living room playing downstairs on the PS4 when I heard a slow knock on the door. I went up to the door and peeked through the peephole, but there was nobody outside. It was pitch black. Without thinking, I opened the door and felt a cold gust of wind go past me into the house. I shut the door and locked it before heading back into the living room. My little brother walked downstairs towards me with a scared look on his face. He looked at me and said, "I saw Grandma sitting on your bed." I felt as if my spirit had just left my body. I was looking at him as if he was crazy. I told him that he was just seeing things. After checking my room, there was nothing there. I went backstairs to play my game, but I heard my little sister crying. As I ran towards her, she pointed to my parents' dark room and said that Grandma was stealing her toy. I looked into their room. As I flipped the lights on, her toys were on the ground next to the computer. I was scared to death, but I had to stay strong for my siblings, so I just chose not to believe in what they said. It was midnight by now, and I recalled my mom telling me that they wouldn't be home until very late at night. So I was in charge of putting my siblings in bed. After putting my little brother and little sister in bed, I turned off all the lights and went to the bathroom to use it. As I was sitting on the toilet, I heard slow footsteps in the hallway. I quickly did my thing and looked at the hallway floor. I noticed that there was a string on the floor. I picked it up and realized that it was one of the strings that were tied to my grandma's arm before she passed away. I went back into the bathroom and turned on the lights to have a better view of it. I looked in the mirror and I saw my grandma standing behind me for a second, but once I blinked, she disappeared. I thought I was just seeing things, so I left the string there and went back into my room to sleep. I turned the light off and covered the blanket over me as I felt someone walking by the end of my bed and slowly pulling my blanket away. I pulled it back as much as I could until it stopped. After what felt like an hour, I was about to fall asleep when my siblings ran into my room telling me that they saw my grandma with her eyes popping out and a long tongue. All of us stayed in my room cuddling as we waited until my parents came back home. I was just 11 years old at the time, so I told them everything we saw, but they didn't believe in us. Ever since then, I would experience scary things like my door randomly opening or the bathroom sink turning on by itself. I'd even had dreams of my grandma following me. We then consulted with a shaman, and they said that it was my grandma just wanting to mess with us since she misses us, and that I really wasn't behaving. Since then, I started to behave better and stopped hanging out with my bad friends. My grandma also stopped messing with me.